Baylor's coming off its biggest win of the year, and yet Texas Tech made it look pretty darn easy against the Bears tonight. This is the Locked On Baylor basketball postgame.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another post-game edition of Locked On Baylor following the Bears' 14-point loss to the Texas Tech Red Raiders out in Lubbock. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show, Rogue Media Sports Network. Appreciate you guys making it your first, second, third, fourth, whatever. All of those listens every day. Tech takes it 73-59, a loss that I think a lot of us probably expected. I think I said it on the show Monday afternoon that Tech to me is right there right now with Iowa State for me, and Houston pretty close by as the best teams in this conference. I think Kansas is at that second level. I think Arizona is at that second level, even though they're number one in the conference right now. I think this Tech team is scary good. I think you saw it tonight. JT Toppin doesn't play pretty much the whole second half. I don't think they had like a great shooting night. I don't think they were getting a lot of the looks that they wanted, especially in the first half. And yet it was like they never took it out of second gear. You know, they're up 10 at halftime. And that last 3 or 4 minutes of the first half, I thought was really impressive from Tech. And it might seem weird because they didn't score the last 3 minutes of the first half. They didn't score at all the last 3 minutes of that first half. And yet the deficit went from 10 for Baylor at that 3-minute mark to 10 at halftime. This is what I mean by Tech can play any style you want, pretty much. You know, like they can slow it down, they can speed it up, they can beat you up the way that we've seen a lot of those teams do, from Beard to Adams to now with McCaslin. They can outshoot you some of these games too. And where I really saw the biggest difference was they outmuscled Baylor. And obviously the Bears were shorthanded tonight, which is just the buzzword of the year for this Baylor team. Like, let's also get this out of the way. They're not going to be healthy this whole year. There's not going to be a time where you're going to say, oh, wow, Baylor's finally got their full allotment. They're never going to have it. It's a pipe dream. I know there are people who are like, yeah, we got to get Love back and we got to get Roach back. And it's like, you know, Roach played today, but who knows about tomorrow? You know, Langston Love, how can you hold your breath? You know, and so that's the reality of this team. I don't know that they're as good as Tech when they are fully healthy, but they're not going to be fully healthy this year. So shorthanded tonight because VJ doesn't typically miss games, and he missed the game today. I go back and forth on this. Like VJ, we obviously knew was a special talent coming into this year. That said, if you are going to be a top level program, you can't just have a freshman miss a game with a rolled ankle and not have any answer, not have anything else. A lot of you thought like VJ was very limited offensively the first month or two of the season. Look at what they do without him. He's their only offense. He is the offense. And Norchad, I mean, this might be an oxymoron, but maybe the most empty double-double we've seen. I do have some respect for how he had to play the entire game essentially, but 16-12 didn't feel like 16-12. It certainly didn't feel like the 18-16 he had against Kansas. And it's wild to me that he now has more double-doubles than Kareem in college. And I get it. Norchad played a lot more games. But that just doesn't feel like Norchad Omier should be beating out Kareem in any significant category, but congratulations to him. That wasn't meant as a diss. It's just wild to think about. Yeah. So where I was starting with that was the rebounding. Baylor ends up tying the rebound total, which I think is incredible, 41 all, because they were getting their ass kicked on the board, specifically that first half. Like Tech did not, their shots weren't falling, but they wanted it more than Baylor did. It was so evident in the first half, just like the game they played in Lubbock last year. They didn't fall behind as much in that as they did in that game, actually. But it's a want to thing. And here's what I keep going back to with this team, shorthanded or fully staffed. Like this loss tonight in a vacuum, and I think most of you will agree with this, which is not all the takes I have, but like this loss in a vacuum, you can live with that. You're shorthanded, Tech's a better team. It's on the road. You lost. You ran out of gas at the end of the race. I think that was pretty evident. That no comeback bid was coming in the last couple of minutes. They were not have a field goal in the last 4.5. So that part of it, it's kind of whatever. But what I keep coming back to is you look at all the games this year they have played that weren't at home and weren't in completely dead gyms. Okay? Like Utah, that's barely a road game. They don't care, right? But you look at those other road games. Gonzaga, UConn, Tennessee to some extent, but I won't count that. Iowa State, BYU, and this game tonight. They don't win any of them. They never win on the road. And that's been a problem with this team over the last couple of years. And I keep saying it. I sound like a broken record, but like that's a mark of a good team. One that can gut one out on the road when they're probably not supposed to. And Baylor just has not done that the last 3 seasons. And specifically this year, it's really been highlighted that they can't do that. And that to me, like that's spine, right? Like that's want to. That's having a pair. And again, this loss, predictable, yeah. But we're talking about 3 years here where they can't win on the road in this conference in any kind of environment. And I know this isn't the most talented Baylor team, but you think Kansas State's talented? Like they're not even going to make the tournament. They just won in Hilton by 20 points. Like teams that really have that in them, that really have that want to, they find a way and they get it done. And Kansas State's not going to win all their road games. I'm not saying that. But Baylor hasn't had a win like Kansas State just had on the road against a much better team in a tough environment in so long. Or any kind of win in a tough environment. Because they lose to lesser teams in tougher environments. They were better than Tech last year. They lost that game at the USA. And they were playing from behind the whole time, just like they were tonight. To be honest, 14 is still a little flattering. It looked like it was going to be like less than 10 that they were going to lose by. And that was really flattering because I just like they weren't close to Tech all night. Like I use this a lot in football, but like Tech is the taller kid who's just got your hand on your head, his hand on your head, and you just keep running and you can't get any closer to him. Putrid 3-point shooting night. 5 of 18 is horrid. And Tech didn't hit their 40%. They shot 38% though. Had 12 more shots than Baylor. I think that's more indicative of the rebounding problem that ends up getting evened out at 41 apiece. But I mean, those of you who watch the game, I mean, you know it. Like, and there's no stat for blown layups and missed layups. But my God, Baylor must have been going for a Big 12 record tonight. They just smoked so many layups. They cheeched and chonged their layups, man. Norchad, again, the double-double, sure, but 5 of 16 from the floor. And then, again, you just need this. Like, Norchad gives you a moment every game or every other game where you just, like, you're so mad, I feel like I'm going to pop a blood vessel. And this is the end of the game, the last 3 minutes or so, where, again, Baylor's down like 5 or 7. Like, it's not crazy. He misses the front end of a 1-and-1. Like, he short arms it, clearly gassed, as most of the players were, front rims it. And then the next time down, he takes a 3. Like, how the F is that supposed to be any better? You just missed a free throw because you don't have you're too fatigued to hit it. And you pulled it out 7 more feet. Like, where is the basketball IQ with this team? It's so frustrating. He's 5 of 16. Roach is back, 3 of 11. And Jaden Nunn. Can Jaden Nunn just give us one good game? One good shooting night again, please? 2 of 7. In 33 minutes, he goes 2 of 7 for 6 points. 1 turnover, 1 rebound, 2 assists. Just running around out there. Just running around. That's what so many of these guys were doing. It looked like they were active, but it was so much activity without accomplishment. They just running around like chickens with their heads cut off out there. It stunk. It stunk. And look, again, I don't like giving the shorthanded excuse again because they're going to be shorthanded this whole season. And I don't like how the team and Scott Drew has framed it throughout, some of their losses this year. But tonight you were without a guy that usually plays and is your best player. It's not like losing 2 quarterbacks, like Scott Drew likes to say, but that this is the one game I think that I'm actually giving them something of a pass. And it's not just because they were shorthanded, it's because they're not as good. And that sucks. But they're not as good as Tech. And tonight, like it was last year, Grant McCaslin had his guys ready to play, and Scott Drew didn't. I love Scott Drew. I want Scott Drew to be the coach. This doesn't change that at all. But if he had gone to Kentucky last year and Baylor was able to get Grant McCaslin, that would have been the next best thing. Truly. The guy can flat out coach. And his teams, they're tough as nails, and they've got some skill that they didn't have under Mark Adams. And they just win. They win. They win at home all the time. What did I again, broken record. I said this a lot this week too. You're going to be okay in this league if you win at home and you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. Tech does that all the time. All the time. They did it last year. They're doing it again this year. They have one of the best home court advantages in a league full of great home court advantages. Like Fog Allen is obviously historically good. Hilton is up there as well. And it's Tech when they get the place packed out. Like when you see a full-on red out and, 8 p.m. tip-off and the place is sold out, even the most optimistic Baylor fans, you turn that game on tonight, you think we have no chance. That's what it feels like when you go to play in Lubbock. No chance. And yeah, this team, this Tech team could very much win this conference in the regular season. Yeah. Austin, let's go to the comments here because I don't want to be too long. Really do think this game is completely different with VJ healthy, but at some point you got to stop the excuses. No matter how good Tech is or how ours. But yeah, I mean, I just gave you some excuses there, but that's kind of the thesis statement of this. Austin put this better than I did through the first 13 and a half minutes of this. I mean, yeah, it's just, again, the good teams sometimes win those games. They pull them out. Baylor does not win those games. Never wins those games. And Bo asked if there's any news. Didn't hear anything on VJ. I don't know if he was there. I don't know if they showed him and I just missed it. I'm not sure he was there at all. Someone could correct me. I could absolutely be wrong on that. Pair the truth. They can't even make open layups without VJ. Yeah. That was such a big part of this game. And it's too bad. I should have took some amateur stats with it because it's too bad it's not on the StatCast. You could fill a room with how many missed layups they had. Jesus, man. And yeah, I mean, just Tech, everyone was getting in on the fun. And obviously McMillian was great. Had a great 3-point shooting night the way Cannon Catchings did at BYU last week. He was on fire. And that's what I mean by Tech can play any way you want. They even got they're throwing up lobs to, what's his name? The guy with the 2 names. What is it? Fedorenko or something? Federico. Yeah, that guy can't score against anybody. And and he puts up 8 points against Baylor because they're just throwing lobs to him. Yeah, that sucked. Jimmy asked a good question. Will this team make the tournament? Good question. Good question. And it's not one that we can definitively answer right now. That said, and we'll talk about this on a show later this week, in bracketology, they're still sitting there on the 9 line, which 11 is the lowest you can get as a Power 4 team, and it's typically a play-in team. So just keep an eye on that. The Kansas win goes a long way. The St. John's win looks better by the week now, but they had a tough stretch kind of the beginning of conference play, and they've been on fire recently. Although they're still not getting national respect, which maybe that doesn't help Baylor. So yeah, they're in the tournament right now, and gun to my head, I'm saying, yeah, they're probably in the tournament, but that pipe dream of getting out of the first weekend, you can keep that going. I don't see them getting out of the first weekend the way they play here. And Chuck agrees with me. Chuck, no disrespect to Chuck, but if we're agreeing on something, that's not a good sign, because Chuck usually tries to be realistic, if not pessimistic, and tell us how it is. He says they have no chance to do anything in the tournament. Right now, they do not. They do not. They don't have any of the intangibles that makes a good tournament team anymore, because they're not a great rebounding team anymore. And there's, they don't have shooters. I was talking with this is kind of off topic, but it does have to do with this team. I was talking with Mosley about this last year when he's talking about Cryer. And I was saying, this team didn't really miss Cryer last year. Like Houston, he was obviously a good fit there and they were a better team, but like, I don't think this team missed Cryer. And you know what he said? He was like, but they could do with like a guy who just comes in and just is a knockdown shooter. Like last year you had Bridges, who was a damn good 3-point shooter, and he was a wing guy who's doing a lot of different things for you. But he was like, no, like I'm talking a guy who just comes in off the bench the way Flagler did in the national championship season. That is just a 3-point guy. And that takes up so much pressure off some of your other guys on this team. Like this team would be the perfect example. Jeremy Roach and Jaden Nunn not having to be the 3-point shooters because they're not good at it. They're not good at it. Nor Chad O'Meara. Oh my God, definitely not good at it. So this team has a lot of needs, but that would be definitely one of like just a guy who'd come off and just freaking hit some threes. Like golly. Anthony asks, can we talk about Luka now? Have you not heard enough Luka talk the last couple of days? I don't want to I have nothing for the Mavs, but I don't want my Mavs fans here grieving even more. I know this is going to shock you. I was surprised by the trade. I don't think it made much sense. Stunning. Jeff puts up a great point. Sold out on a work day. That's a great fan base. Yep. I don't want to fillet Tech too much here. But Tech is a really good fan base, and they don't make the excuses that Baylor fans make. They just don't. And I know, most of you watching live or listening after the fact, you guys aren't that Baylor fan that makes the excuses. But yeah, I mean, they see this as a big game because they have a really good team and they're playing at home. Baylor's not in the rankings. They're not, a top 10 team or anything like that. But they say in-state rival, Hall of Fame coach, we're at home. Like, let's go. Let's punch this thing out. And I know they have a bigger school than Baylor, but I'm telling you. And their alums are also spread out. Trust me, I lived in Odessa, man. There's a ton of Tech people there. And that's 2 hours away. They would go up to that game. They would go up to weeknight games. So it's not like that's an empty excuse by Baylor fans. Yeah, I mean, Tech has a really good fan base, and I like them every other time except when they're playing Baylor, like truly. Yeah, this is a frustrating game. Again, not the craziest loss they've had, not the most disappointing loss they've had, but so Jimmy says same song, different day. I couldn't have said it any better myself. Same song, different day. You saw it coming from a mile away. Anthony said, Coach Drew has no system with this team. It's really disappointing. have to agree. Again, I love Scott Drew, but what is the identity of this team? That's what I keep saying. I said this from the beginning of January. Even in their wins, it's like, what really is the identity of this team? There's not something that they do really well. There's not something that they can do to, like, there's no strength that they have that can expose your weakness. I said this about Baylor football this year before this is when they were 2-4 and they hadn't turned things around yet. But I said, when was the last time, Baylor had such a strength and you had a weakness and they were just going to crush you with it? It made me think of the OU football game in 22. Remember that? When both teams ended 6-6. And it was up in Norman. And we just saw it from a mile away. OU cannot stop the run. Baylor can run the football. That's how they're going to beat them. And that's exactly how they did it. And then they went 2 years without doing something like that. Baylor basketball right now is that way. Last year you would have said this team can't defend against the perimeter. Like Baylor's gonna shoot the lights out. Or the Cincinnati game at home last year, where you said Cincinnati can't shoot from the outside, zone the crap out of them. And they did. But they don't have that on either end of the court this year. They don't have a strength that can exploit a team's weakness, a team that's on their level or better. They can't do it. That was a long way of getting to that. Jimmy says, good point. Our next road game is at Houston. We are cooked. Yeah, not a favorable matchup for Baylor. And certainly not a favorable matchup down low, especially if you ask Fran Fraschilla. We're going to talk about that as that game gets closer. And one last one. Carter said, first time really watching Baylor this year. Would VJ have made a difference in this game? Yes. He absolutely would have. I don't know that they would have won because I have that kind of respect for this Tech team. But yes, it would have looked a lot different on both ends of the floor. And I guess I should say, if Baylor's kind of quote unquote hanging as tough as they did, again, it didn't feel like they were going to steal this game at any point or get it to a 2-point game or a tie game. But when they had it at 5, 7, 8 points late on in the game, that's where VJ makes a huge difference because he's someone you can go to. They don't have anyone they can go to when he's not out there. And, we saw it. There's some nights even when he's out there, they don't have many options, and they just don't. The offensive metrics on this team are still lying to you. Don't look at where they rank in the nation and in Big 12 and, points or 3-point shooting like that. That is what Brad Brownell was talking about last year. That was padded in the non-con. They're not a very good offensive team. They're nothing special defensively. And that's just what you got right now. Again, you got to win your home games. You got to beat the teams you're better than. You've got both those things on Saturday. You're better than UCF. You're playing at home. You got to beat them. But I really do think this Tech team can win this thing. Yeah. Baylor's got no shot. No shot. They got to worry about tournament. They have to worry about making the tournament. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Obviously, great crowd coming up on a Tuesday night at 10:30. I really appreciate you guys. I'm still so amazed whenever I come on these live post games, and it's such a great turnout. So thank you for making it your first and second listen every day. We've got the 2 shows tomorrow. We're going to talk a lot of football in the morning and specifically breaking down that schedule and why Baylor has probably the toughest schedule in the country for the first month of the season. But that's actually really beneficial to them. That's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. We'll also have some basketball as well. And maybe it's time to fire Bill Self. That's in the evening edition. Thank you guys so much. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you don't catch us on YouTube, please do catch us wherever you find your podcasts. I'm a podcast guy, so I listen to a lot of the Locked On shows on podcasts, and that helps us host out even more. So seriously, if you're on the go, we certainly put it out at certain times to make sure you have it on your ride into and ride home from work. Thank you guys so much. Like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, leave the comments about how great Tech is, how bad Baylor is, or vice versa. Really appreciate you guys. You make this the #1 source for Baylor sports news, the #1 Baylor sports show. And we will see you in the morning on Locked On Baylor.